The Silent Sentinels. Admiral Eliza Thorne stood before the enormous holographic display, her weathered face illuminated by the dancing blue glow of data streams. The Orbital Command Center, officially designated as Weather Monitoring Station Alpha to any prying extraterrestrial eyes, hummed with controlled tension as technicians monitored incoming signals. On the display, a cloud of red markers approached Earth's solar system at sublight speeds. The Hegemony War Fleet had arrived. Confirmations from deep space probes. Admiral, announced Lieutenant Commander Reyes, his fingers dancing across the haptic interface. 53 capital ships, approximately 200 support vessels. Class matches with Hegemony subjugation fleet configuration. Estimated arrival at Neptune's orbit in 6 hours. Thorne nodded, her steel-gray eyes never leaving the display. And our status. All systems nominal. Quantum field generators at 98% efficiency. The surface shield network reports green across all nodes. Orbital platforms remain in passive mode and undetected. Thorne allowed herself a thin smile. For 40 years she had prepared for this day. Ever since the Hegemony scout ships had arrived to peacefully survey Earth's solar system. She remembered the first transmission that had reached Earth, how the Hegemony diplomats had assessed humanity with detached curiosity, as one might observe ants before deciding whether to destroy their hill. The memory was still vivid, the alien faces on the screens in the UN Assembly Hall. Scaled creatures with gleaming golden eyes and voices that seemed to echo from multiple throats simultaneously. Their message had been clear. Earth could join the Hegemony as a protectorate, a polite term for servitude, or face necessary pacification. Earth's response, crafted by politicians and scientists in desperate closed-door sessions, had been deliberately meek. They had projected an image of technological inferiority, of a species barely capable of interplanetary travel, still dependent on fossil fuels and primitive nuclear fission. Earth had requested time to prepare for such a monumental transition. The Hegemony had granted them 10 years. 10 years that humanity had used not to prepare for submission, but for something entirely different. Admiral, Reyes interrupted her thoughts. We're receiving the expected transmission from the Hegemony flagship. Put it through, Thorne ordered, straightening her uniform. The main display shifted, revealing the scaled visage of Arch-Commander Vexlar, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony subjugation fleet. People of Earth, the alien began, each word precisely measured. Your allotted preparation period has concluded. The Hegemony extends its final invitation for your peaceful integration into our collective. Resistance will result in your reclassification as a hostile species and appropriate measures will be taken. Thorne stepped forward. This is Admiral Eliza Thorne of Earth's Unified Defense Command. We receive your message, Arch-Commander. We request additional time to. Denied. Vexlar interrupted. Your primitive species has exhausted its accommodation period. We detect no significant advancement in your technological capabilities. The evaluation period ends. Prepare for integration. The transmission cut abruptly. Thorne turned to her command staff, her expression hardening. They've made their choice. Initiate Sentinel Protocol. Throughout the solar system, objects that had appeared to be nothing more than orbital debris, abandoned satellites, and inactive space probes came to life. From the asteroid belt to the Kuiper region, thousands of devices activated simultaneously, establishing a web of quantum-entangled nodes that enveloped the entire solar system. On the Hegemony flagship, Arch-Commander Vexlar observed the approach to Earth with mild disinterest. Their intelligence had confirmed what they had suspected. The humans had wasted their reprieve. Planetary scans showed the expected increase in communications infrastructure, some modest advances in fusion technology, and a handful of small Martian outposts. Nothing that would challenge even a fraction of his fleet. Prepare subjugation protocols, he ordered. Deploy pacification drones to their major population centers. Standard frightening display should suffice. I predict surrender within 3 planetary rotations. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krell, approached with a puzzled expression. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations throughout the system." "Specify," Vexler demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors are reporting contradictory data. It appears as if certain regions of space are shimmering." Vexler dismissed the concern with a flick of his scaled hand. "Primitive attempts at electronic countermeasures. Ignore and proceed with the deployment." As the Hegemony fleet crossed Neptune's orbit, the first anomalies began. Scout ships reported unusual navigational discrepancies. Weapon targeting systems experienced calibration failures. Communication between vessels became intermittent, plagued by strange echoes and time delays that defied physics. "Sir," Krell reported, anxiety now evident in his multi-tone voice, "something is happening to our drive systems. Ships are reporting spontaneous transitions in and out of hyperspace. It's as if the fabric of space itself is becoming unstable." On Earth, Thorne watched as the first phase of humanity's defense unfolded. "Quantum field disruption at 60% and rising," Rise reported. "The Hegemony fleet is experiencing exactly the predicted effects." For decades, hidden beneath the facade of a developing civilization, Earth's scientists had made a breakthrough that had changed everything. The discovery of quantum field manipulation. While the rest of the galaxy had pursued ever more powerful energy weapons and faster-than-light drives, humanity had taken a different path, learning to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality itself. The Hegemony fleet continued its approach, now moving more cautiously as systems throughout their vessels began to fail in increasingly alarming ways. Navigation computers displayed impossible coordinates. Power cores fluctuated between critical overload and complete shutdown. The very laws of physics seemed to become suggestions rather than rules. "This is impossible," Vexler hissed, his scales shifting to a pale yellow of consternation. "Scan their planet again. What technology are they using?" "Sir, we can't get coherent readings," Krell replied, frantically working his console. "Our scanners show them as a pre-spacefaring civilization one moment, then detect impossible energy readings the next. It's as if we're seeing multiple versions of their planet simultaneously." As the Hegemony fleet approached Mars, the second phase activated. The quantum disruption field intensified, creating localized pockets where probability itself became fluid. On several ships, crew members reported seeing multiple versions of themselves performing different actions. Weapon systems fired without commands, targeting nothing. In some sections, time itself appeared to flow at different rates. "Arch Commander," Krell's voice had risen to a near panic. "The flagship's core systems are destabilizing. We're detecting similar reports throughout the fleet. Whatever they're doing, impossible." Vexler slammed his clawed hand onto the command console. "They are primitives. They barely have functional spacecraft. Launch all weapons now, before we lose the capability entirely." The Hegemony fleet unleashed its arsenal. Plasma torpedoes, graviton beams, and antimatter warheads streaked toward Earth in a display of overwhelming firepower that should have reduced the planet's surface to molten slag. Not a single weapon reached its target. Some simply vanished mid-flight. Others curved in impossible trajectories, as if space itself rejected their presence. The rest detonated prematurely, creating spectacular but harmless light shows in Earth's upper atmosphere. In the orbital command center, Admiral Thorne watched the failed assault with grim satisfaction. "Final phase," she ordered. "Initiate Protocol Prometheus." Throughout the solar system, the quantum disruption field coalesced, focusing its effects directly on the Hegemony fleet. Reality itself seemed to fold around the alien vessels, creating a pocket of space-time that existed both here and elsewhere simultaneously. On her display, Thorne watched as the massive Hegemony fleet began to shimmer like a mirage in desert heat. Ship by ship, they appeared to stretch, distort, and then simply fade from normal space, not destroyed, but removed to another layer of reality entirely. "Quantum displacement complete," Admiral Rise announced, his voice hushed with awe at what they had just accomplished. The hegemony fleet has been successfully shifted to the parallel probability state. They're contained within the quantum bubble. Thorne nodded, feeling the weight of 40 years of preparation lift from her shoulders. Establish communication with their command vessel. It's time they learned exactly who they've been dealing with. Defiance unveiled. Arch-Commander Vexlar had experienced many things in his 3 centuries of service to the hegemony. He had subjugated worlds where the inhabitants could manipulate fire with their minds. He had negotiated with gaseous entities that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously. He had even survived a Void Kraken attack in the Varenis cluster. But he had never experienced anything like this. His flagship, indeed his entire fleet, now existed in a state that defied conventional physics. Looking through the observation ports, he could see space itself rippling like the surface of a disturbed pond. Stars appeared to move in erratic patterns, sometimes multiplying into countless copies of themselves before collapsing back into singularity. His crew moved about in confusion, some appearing to occupy multiple positions simultaneously before snapping back into a single form. "Status report," he demanded, though he was uncertain if there was any meaning to such a request in their current situation. "Impossible to determine, Arch-Commander," Krell responded, his form occasionally blurring as if viewed through shifting water. "Our instruments indicate we are simultaneously in Earth's orbit and several light-years away. Power systems are functional but reporting impossible efficiency ratings. Weapons are online but targeting systems cannot lock onto anything substantial." The main communication system activated without command, and the face of Admiral Thorne appeared on the display. Behind her, Vexlar could see a command center far more advanced than anything Earth should possess. "Arch-Commander Vexlar," she began, her voice calm and measured, "your fleet is currently contained within what we call a quantum probability bubble. You exist in a superposition of multiple states of reality. We can maintain this condition indefinitely, or we can collapse the field and return you to normal space. The choice depends on your willingness to listen." Vexlar's scales shifted to the deep crimson of fury. "What trickery is this? Earth has no such technology." "The Earth you evaluated doesn't," Thorne agreed. "What you saw was precisely what we wanted you to see. While the hegemony was busy conquering worlds through brute force, humanity took a different path. We discovered that reality itself is far more mutable than most species realize." On the command display, images appeared showing vast underground facilities on Earth, Mars, and throughout the asteroid belt. Facilities housing technologies that made the hegemony's most advanced systems look primitive by comparison. "For generations, we've maintained 2 civilizations," Thorne explained. The public face, struggling, primitive, barely unified, and the true extent of human development, hidden beneath the surface, extending throughout our solar system. "We've been manipulating quantum fields since before your scout ships first arrived." Vexlar's mind raced. It was impossible, and yet the evidence surrounded him. His mighty fleet, the pride of the hegemony, rendered helpless not by superior firepower, but by a fundamental misunderstanding of what they were facing. "What do you want?" he finally asked, years of diplomatic training asserting themselves over his instinctive rage. "Recognition and autonomy," Thorne replied without hesitation. "Earth and the Sol system are to be acknowledged as a sovereign territory, off-limits to hegemony expansion. We will establish diplomatic relations as equals, not as conqueror and conquered. The High Council will never agree." "They will when they see what we've done to your fleet," Thorne interrupted. "And when they understand what we could do to hegemony core worlds if provoked. We don't seek conflict, Arch-Commander. We've had ample opportunity to destroy your fleet entirely. Instead, we chose containment and communication." As if to emphasize her point, one of the hegemony's support vessels suddenly winked out of existence, then reappeared a moment later several kilometers from its original position. "A demonstration," Thorne explained. "We can selectively remove objects from our shared reality. Your weapons, your ships, even the hegemony homeworld itself, all could be shifted into a parallel state of existence where they would pose no threat. Vexlar felt something he had not experienced since his youth: fear, not the momentary concern of battle, but the deep existential dread that came from recognizing a superior force. "I will need to consult with the High Council," he said finally. "Of course," Thorne nodded. "We'll establish a stable quantum corridor for your communications. In the meantime, I invite you to join me aboard our command station. It's time we spoke properly, as equals." 6 hours later, Admiral Thorne stood in the observation deck of Orbital Command, watching as the shimmering distortion that had enveloped the hegemony fleet gradually dissipated. Beside her, Vexlar looked out at his vessels with a mixture of relief and lingering shock. "The High Council has agreed to your terms, Admiral," he said, his voice carrying the formal tones of official declaration. "Earth and the Sol system are recognized as sovereign and autonomous. The hegemony extends an invitation for diplomatic exchange between our peoples." Thorne nodded. "A wise decision." "They had little choice," Vexlar admitted. "But I confess to curiosity. Why reveal yourselves now? You could have continued your deception, remained hidden until your development progressed even further." Thorne turned to face the alien commander. "Because isolation has its limits. Humanity has achieved much, but we recognize that true growth comes through exchange and cooperation. We needed to establish our position from a place of strength, but our ultimate goal is peaceful coexistence, not dominance." Vexlar's scales rippled in what Thorne had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. An unusual perspective. Most species, upon discovering such power, immediately seek to expand their influence. "Perhaps that's why we took a different path," Thorne suggested. "Throughout our history, we've seen the rise and fall of empires built on conquest. None last. We chose to focus on understanding reality itself rather than controlling others." As the hegemony fleet regained full functionality and prepared to depart, news of what had occurred spread throughout known space. The impossible story of how a supposedly primitive world had single-handedly neutralized the most powerful military force in the galaxy without destroying a single ship or taking a single life. 3 months later, Admiral Thorne stood in the newly constructed Earth Embassy on the hegemony capital world. Through the crystalline windows, she could see representatives from 24 species arriving for the first Galactic Concord Summit, a meeting where, for the first time, Earth would take its place among the stars not as a conquered world or minor player, but as a founding member of a new interstellar community. Lieutenant Commander Rice approached, offering a data tablet. "The last of the quantum defense network is online, Admiral. Earth is secure." Thorne accepted the report with a nod. "And Project Prometheus, ready for presentation to the Concord delegates. Our scientists believe shared quantum field technology could revolutionize everything from medicine to interstellar travel." "Good," Thorne said, looking out at the gathering of species. "It's time the galaxy understood that humanity's strength isn't in our capacity for war, but in our ability to imagine different realities and then bring them into existence." As she prepared to address the assembled delegates, Thorne reflected on humanity's unusual path to the stars. They had not conquered through force or intimidated through power. They had simply waited, watched, and understood that the greatest strength lay not in weapons that destroyed, but in knowledge that transformed. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity.